Welcome to HEM's webinar today. The topic is how to launch a new school program, online marketing to stand out and bring students in. So just one, clarification in case there's any confusion. So we're primarily be talking about the online marketing component to any new program or course your school is planning on releasing or is just released. So anything about, curriculum design, things like that. We'll assume that, you're going to be handling this internally, and we're just going to focus on once you have your new amazing course, how to get this out there and get those students in. So a little bit of housekeeping before we get into the webinar proper. So we're using Zoom, I believe. There's a lot of different platforms these days. So you can use the Q&A function here if you have any questions. Feel free to type them in at any point during the course of the webinar, and we'll get to them right at the end. We should have about 5 minutes for questions. You can also use the chat if you want to leave comments and things. We'll have at least one of our staff members sort of on hand to maybe, monitor what's going on along the time. And the session is also being recorded. So these slides, the recording will be sent to you probably within the next business day. So before the end of the week, most likely. So there'll be two of us presenting here today. Myself, I'm Alexander Nahai. I'm the Director of Paid Ads and Analytics here at HEM. So what that sort of means is that my teams handle anything that has an ad budget as well as KPI reporting. And joining me as well will be Valentin, who I'll let say just a few words about himself right now.
Hi, everybody. So my name is Valentin Vimel. I'm the inbound marketing manager at HEM, and my team is in charge of everything related to content for our clients, which includes blog posts, social media, and SEO optimization.
Great. So our agenda for today, there's sort of three sections to the webinar. There's our initial sort of part here, getting started, some groundwork, as well as before you get around to, the actual launch of a program. Probably the bulk of what we'll talk about today is going to be in the getting the word out and building awareness stage. So, what sort of resources you want to leverage, what channels you might want to use as you expand your launch. And we'll also cap it off with a couple of paid ad strategies and ways to, really fill the top of your funnel once you have these campaigns underway. So how do you get qualified leads as soon as possible once your launch is underway? So before we get to the meat of the matter, we want to just have a quick poll at the beginning to see where you guys kind of stand with some things. So the question we have for everybody is, how many channels have you previously used when advertising a new program launch? So I think you should be getting a poll popping up. I see it. There it is. So if you use, one channel, which could be like an email blast, 2 to 3, maybe you post on your social media. 4+ probably means you've covered all the bases. Unsure, that's totally fair as well. And none is also fair, which means you probably have a lot of notes to take today. So we'll let the poll remain open for just a couple seconds longer and see where everybody stands today. All right. So I think that's probably enough time. I see a lot of answers came in. So we got one and unsure. A majority of people here 2 to 3. So that's good to see at least. You're not just hoping the wind picks up your program when you launch something new. You're doing some marketing. But I guess what was covered today is that there's actually probably a whole bunch of additional channels maybe you haven't considered, and we'll hopefully give you guys some ideas about how you can kind of pair these together and have a big launch, get the most out of it. All righty. So getting started. So like I said at the start of this webinar, what basically the things we're going to talk about today, sort of the resources and the ideas, is really that you've either have a new program that's on its way or just about finishing the touches on it, but you haven't really launched it to the world to start attracting students. So again, we're kind of assuming you've done the sort of internal housekeeping and all the, the work that you would normally do administratively to set this up. But at this stage, it might still be a good idea to start doing a bit of a self-audit for the actual marketing phase of things. So a few questions that we listed here are also ones, you can either ask yourself, or if you work with an agency, they're the questions they're probably going to ask you as well. These are pretty common things that we also ask our own clients when we work with them. So probably the number one thing for any new program is, who are my intended students? So different students sign up for different programs and different courses. Depending on what you're offering, they might have a certain, educational background. Maybe they need to have prerequisites. Maybe they have different interests. Maybe if you've been running a school for a while, you have sort of a snapshot of what most of your students look like. People in their 30s going for a second career, people fresh out of high school who want to get into college. So really kind of put together a sort of mini persona, at least have that idea in hand or in mind before you get to the marketing phase, because it will really help us, or especially you and your own marketing teams, whoever's working on it, get really precise when it comes to the actual targeting. Next, be where are you finding them? Are you looking for students in certain neighborhoods, certain cities, states, provinces? Is it international? This also makes a difference in how you reach them. And then what channels and resources are already at your disposal. So a lot of schools, you might have a few people on the social media team in-house, maybe you have a newsletter. These are all really good things that you can leverage for it. A newsletter to alumni or existing students, particularly if it's just for a new course. So kind of take stock of what you have and what you think you have and what has worked in the past. And these are all sort of good, starting points for doing more marketing. Another one is why should they in this case being students, choose my program over others? So this is sort of your USP. And so this is also going to be pretty integral to figuring out how we start marketing your new program launch. So, I mean, makes your program so special? Why would they choose this one over that of somebody else? And then lastly, when is the right time to advertise this program? So this question here kind of segues into our next slide where I put some common misconceptions about when to launch. And so these are kind of based on some things we've talked about with some of our clients in the past and prospects as well that wanted to, advertise something new that they're bringing out. And so these are some of the more recurring questions and points that we've seen, which I think are actually kind of, deceiving when you look at them. So one of the classics is that summer vacations or the winter holidays are off season. So there's not really any point marketing. I mean, this might have been a bit more true in the past, but what we've seen definitely since at the end of COVID and the time since then is that there tends to be these spikes in the summer and the winter holidays. Probably around the time, the exams are wrapping up or that people are starting to go on vacation. And so even though it's off season, we do actually see quite a surge of interest in people wanting to go back to school either in the fall or the spring. And we do also see that there tends to be less competition here as well. So maybe classical thinking is like, no point, we should all just go on vacation. These are actually really key parts in that if you want to have a good start in the fall or the spring, you should actually make the most of these sort of off seasons, quote, right beforehand. Another one we hear is that, schools already promoting too many other courses. So this is actually not a bad thing. If you're launching a new course or a new program, most likely you've done the research, you found a different course entirely, which means there'll be different people taking it. It shouldn't really clash and overlap with what you already have unless, I don't know, you're making some courses exactly the same as all your others, which maybe begs the question why launch it. But, if you're bringing in a new course, there's a good chance that whatever you're doing for the other ones, it's not going to interfere with what you're doing for this one. Another one is sort of the students will find it. Well, without any action required, not necessarily. I mean, students will find a course, but it probably won't be yours if you're not doing any sort of marketing launch for it. I mean, when your competitors launch new programs, they're certainly advertising. And two, they're kind of related that there's no competition. Why bother? Or there's too much competition. What's the point? So the first one, if there's no competition, well, then that's actually the world is your oyster right there. You'll be the only one, especially, if it's during one of these off seasons. If you're advertising when all your competitors are taking vacation, or your program is the only one that people are getting their eyes on during that time. So it's actually fantastic. And if there's too much, well, that's maybe just a reason that there's a lot of demand for this course as well, and maybe a reason to also really plan your program launch. And so we've kind of put together three big reasons why you might want to go big with your launch as opposed to, maybe just an email blast or, telling a few alumni. So one, this is taking an active approach. The important thing here to consider is that your competitors are not being passive when they launch new programs. So if there's another school in the city with you offering similar programs, there's a good chance they're going to take, the big route and yours might not even get as much notice. So there's no reason to just sit back and hope that things work out when especially you have the tools and the resources to make it different. You get a lot of ground covered if you actually go for a big launch. And so Google is still the most important search engine out there. It's one of the most important ways that anybody finds anything, these days. And so while it's still number one, what we're seeing in the data is a lot of younger generations are using other platforms as search engines as sort of their first way to discover educational, offerings. So there's tons of data out there as well that shows that Instagram and TikTok are really big right now. People sometimes use those as the first way to even find out. So a lot of people are using those platforms to learn about courses. And if you're not there, you're kind of missing out on that first touch point. Also, by, putting together this larger plan, you can be highly targeted. So precise geo interests and sort of student profiles will let you basically not waste your time, trying to get as many eyes on it, but as many relevant eyes on your program. Because obviously, if you're looking for somebody that has, say, your new program is for a master's level, you don't really want people fresh out of high school because they won't be qualified or vice versa. So you can really, get a really good plan in and just get as many eyes, again, in the right demographics that make the most sense for you. And so as we get sort of into the next part of our webinar here, we talk about a lot of the different channels and resources and ideas to bring up. I put together sort of quick slide, sort of a bit of a roadmap per se about if we're to break your marketing launch into three phases, we'd have our prep, our pre-launch, early launch, which is mostly about building awareness, and our late launch, which is really about filling up your funnel. So in the prep phase, there's a few things you might want to build even before you get to, the advertising phase, which would be your program page, your landing page, which we'll talk about more, and a lead magnet as well, which we're also going to talk about in a few slides. And during the early part of your launch, once you have some of the foundations up, you're really going to be looking at awareness, maybe not expecting everybody to immediately sign up and register, but at least put it in their mind so that if it takes a week, 2 weeks, a month before they decide, that at least they have it there and we can keep them engaged with a couple of different nifty ideas. And lastly, late launch is really just, getting your funnel filled with a lot of inquiries, a lot of interested candidates. This involves a bit more going heavy on advertising versus other channels and remarketing. And usually this is really good as it gets close to, say, if you have a deadline for when the program starts, you'll want to get really heavy at the end because there's a lot of last minute shoppers in education. And we've seen this with pretty much almost any school type. The closer it gets to the deadline, the more likely people are going to scramble and actually, take that first step towards an application. So the first part of, I guess, the foundation work in the early stage, like the pre-launch stage, would be this lead magnet that we're talking about. So if you're not familiar with the concept of a lead magnet, basically what this is that it's some sort of collateral offering or, anything a bit more, anything fairly tangible that really, attracts leads to it. So it's a magnet because things stick to it, come towards it. It's really something that can help your marketing campaign stand out. So, I mean, there's sort of the classical way of, collecting leads, filling your funnel, getting interest could be, just send people to a page or get them to fill in an RFI form. And these work, don't get me wrong, but having a magnet, that extra thing to it, sort of as a cherry on top of the cake, can really help your offering stand out. So what are some examples of lead magnets? Some of the common ones could be like a program brochure that gives the course and campus overview, success rates for that program, talks about the faculty's credentials and the outcomes. So it really answers a lot of the questions and pain points that students might have before, going further. Could be a checklist even, if you're one of these study abroad or boarding schools, maybe you want to talk about things that you want to get prepared before you stay in another country. Resource list could be, just all around good tips for college success. Or if you live in a really vibrant city, that could be a selling point too, like, top 10 things to see while you study here. Also, open houses are something we saw a lot of this summer. Give a free lunch. It's pretty good for a lot of students. They want to show up, have a couple of hot dogs and get a campus tour and so forth. Also, in North America, even Canada a lot, there's a lot of places where there's some good financial support. Could be a government grant you want to advertise, have as your lead magnet that, most of their tuition will be paid. Maybe your school offers bursaries. So things like this are really what can like kick up your sort of new program launch to the next level. That not only is it this interesting program that these students probably want, but there's this added bonus right now, something tangible, something helpful. That's going to really push it a little bit further. And so some key attributes of, a successful lead magnet, things like it should appeal to your audience. It should be something, they find exciting, solves common problems or addresses pain points. So you probably know some of your students well, and in the past, what others have had questions about studying your school. Maybe some of these could be funneled into this lead magnet. It should also be very specific to this program and these students. You don't want it to be maybe too generic. Easy to understand, provides value. So it's something that they feel really happy they received. Be, look at this awesome thing I got. It's telling me so many things I need to know. Immediate delivery is also very important. So when you're following up, you want them to be able to get this pretty much immediately. If it's after an RFI form or through an email campaign, you want some way that they're not going to, spend 2 weeks waiting and then forget about it, but have it in their hands before they get some sort of similar magnet from one of your competitors. So the first one that they see will be yours, and that'll be really planted with them. These should also demonstrate your USP and sustain your brand as well. So obviously you wouldn't want to just, have a lead magnet. Wouldn't be some like unstructured Google Doc about reasons why your school is amazing. You want to have it really convey this sort of unique proposition about why your school matters, why it's just like yours and not the other. So it could be success rates, could be credentials of your profs. There's something about your school that really sets it apart, and that's where you want to highlight here. And so from there, I'm going to pass it over to Valentin to talk a bit more about a lot of these other channels and resources at your disposals and some ways in which this lead magnet can be utilized. So Valentin, I'll let you take it over for a bit.
Perfect. Thank you, Alex. So as Alex mentioned, when you find who your persona is, who is your personal potential student or parents, you have different options to launch a new program on different channel. And the first thing to consider is obviously the program page on your website, which is all the details that are going to be included to make sure that we have a clear understanding of what the programs offer. And what's important here is to include different elements, which is first of all the program overview, where we're going to have an idea of what's the program title, what's the diploma you're going to get, what's the duration, and what are the start dates. Then on the page you can have more details when you scroll. Curriculum and learning is also essential to include in a program outline. Potential students and parents should have an idea of what the curriculum is, who are the faculty and instructor, if possible. Are there any advising and support? Are there any learning resources that are available for the program? Opportunities is also an important element to include. What are the careers opportunity? Are there any internship or practicals? Will I gain experience? What are the opening doors after the program? What are the study opportunities after the program? And then application and contact information is also an important element to include at the end of the page. The potential students and the parents should have an idea of what are the admission criteria, the application process, the tuition and financial aid, if there are any, the application deadline, the content information, and most importantly, I would say a call to action. So it could be anything like fill out a small form to get access for a program brochure, for example. It could be also emails with details about the programs or the prices to get access to the program. And finally, there is the SEO optimization and USP element that are essential also to include to make sure that this program page will appear on the first page of search engine. So what we highly recommend is to include frequently asked questions, SEO optimized keywords, and also overall in the program page, we should see what are the unique selling proposition and messaging. Blog posts is also a great way to launch a new program. There are different type of blog posts that can be created and integrated to the website. Those blog posts need to be SEO optimized with very specific keywords, with structured data. And there are different type of blog posts that can be created. A good way to highlight a new program is to start with an announcement blog post. Then we could do a program overview where we have more details about what the program is. There is also an opportunity also to do a blogs interview where we can highlight the faculty and instructors, what are their professional background. Study and careers opportunity after the program, what it takes to succeed in the program. The idea with the blog post is to have a clear view of what the program is and to answer all the potential concern students or parents may have about this program. FAQ and how-to is also a good opportunity and way to highlight a program. Another way to launch a new program is to use sponsored content. Sponsored content is very trendy, and it's a good way to wider the audience reach. It's also an opportunity to gain credibility, trust, and brand awareness, thought leadership, and you can also get data analytics from this. On this slide, for example, we have on the right side a school that is based in Montreal, who decided to promote some of their programs through one of the most consulted blog in Montreal by young students, and this is what the school is actually targeting. So as you can see on the screenshot, it says sponsored, and those type of articles are usually written in a trendy way, and it includes also keywords and links that directs to the website. Social media. So as Alex mentioned earlier, social media is essential as the young generation students tend to search more and more often first on social media to learn about something. So an organic time-based social media campaign is a great way to spread the word about a new program. And there are a lot of different ways to highlight a new program on social media. It can be a teaser post, it can be interactive quizzes. There's also the opportunity to include infographics that can be integrated to the website, but also shared on social media. It could also be short videos. There is also the option to include comparative posts to highlight what's so unique about your program versus other programs in general. And then you can also use, sometimes depending on the type of program, but use some trends that are on social media to present this program. So on the screenshot on the right side of the screen, we have an example of videos that were published by a college that is in Montreal. It's basically an interview with one of the professor at the school, and it's a great way here to answer the most frequent asked questions. And when those interviews are live, it can be live, for example, on LinkedIn or Facebook. The potential student can also share their comments, and a question can be answered directly. And then at the end, when those content are published, the final option also to increase visibility is to use the option to boost all those content with paid content. Newsletter and email campaign is another options to highlight to launch a new program. Newsletter, if, for example, the program could be destined to alumni, like a program to upgrade skills, and also email campaigns with all the leads that you can collect with direct paid advertising. So promoting a new school program through newsletter or email campaign can be effective for a different reason. It can provide a direct line of communication with your leads. It can be also very personalized, and it can better resonate with the audience. Newsletter and email campaigns is also a great way to have opportunity to get access to tracking and analytics to see the performance. And also, if they are automated, you can save a lot of time So it's a great opportunity to use this type of media. And then it can generate traffic to your website, but also social media, depending on which call to action you decide to include. What we see also more often is that with newsletter and emails, visual content is essential, and don't hesitate to include like appealing graphic and images to those type of content. For example, on the right side here, we have an infographics that we made for one of our clients for an email campaign. And this is a very, I would say, more interesting way to share information, and it's visually more interesting in general. Webinars. So webinar is also another opportunity to launch a program. And as you can see here, we have a webinar, and it's a great way to show things in a different ways, and also for the potential student or parents to ask questions that they may have. And those webinars can be also recorded and then shared on social media. They can be announced on email marketing, sometimes also in specific educational forums and groups. The newsletter also is a good media to highlight webinars, and of course the website and blog post. And at the end, we have the option also to do press release. Press release is also a good opportunity to launch a program. It makes things more official. It can also be an opportunity to build credibility and authority again, and it can lead to media coverage sometimes, and it can also be reaching a broader audience.
All right, thanks, Valentin. So in the last sort of part of our discussion here, I'm going to turn things over to paid advertising. Um, so paid advertising should probably figure at least some major way to the later part of your launch, especially if you want to get those leads, fill up your funnel. But there's a few things also you might want to start to consider before you get your paid strategy underway, before we even talk about what could be part of that strategy. So it's probably good to start, prepping your existing assets. So if you've been advertising for a while, you probably have, Meta Ads Manager, Google Ads Manager, maybe some pages, pixels set up, things like that. So before you launch the program, you kind of want to take stock of things and, make sure everything's set up the way it should be. So one that could be good, especially if you're launching or you've launched a lot of programs in the past, is to do a review of your existing targeting on your other campaigns. So you might want to look, say, on Facebook to see what audiences your other campaigns are targeting, so you don't overlap too much with this new program, or on Google. I mean, as long as the programs are separate, you probably should have no difficulty getting different keyword lists. But if it's kind of close, you might want to just double check so you're not really just bidding against yourself. So some things like that you would be good to check before you launch on paid ads. Also, make sure all your relevant pages are tagged with the appropriate pixels for remarketing. So this could include, tagging your landing pages, but also your program pages, maybe your home page with pixels. So you're not necessarily sending people there, but anybody from all these different channels that you have, when they're coming to the site, you can still remarket to them on paid, which is one of the great things about paid. So say a visitor comes to Google organically, somebody comes through your newsletter, hits your website, you can, as long as those site pages are tagged properly, you can then start showing them some ads on Meta or TikTok later, as a way to remind them after they've already engaged with your content. You're also going to want to definitely prep a relevant landing page for your paid ads destination. And so I guess this is important because, well, Valente talked about program page, which is really good to have a lot of content there. It really helps with the SEO. Landing pages, we're not so concerned about the SEO. We really just want to get people to fill in that form, go after the lead magnet, and, take that first step, getting into your funnel. So you'd probably want your landing page to be very stripped down, doesn't have links to the rest of your website, probably not have a lot of video or things there could slow it down. You really want it to be very easy to navigate, point everything towards this program and your lead magnet so that you fill in that form, and then it goes from there. Contrary though, if you're using social media, we would actually not recommend you send people necessarily to a landing page. You could send, traffic to there, But if you're looking for those conversions from social media, we're seeing a lot of problems with sending people to websites these days. So there's some fairly complicated ways you can set up around it, but by default, any user using like an Apple device doesn't really gel very well with Facebook pixels or Instagram pixels, and often you don't see the data you should. It might look like your campaigns are less effective. So in the case of social media, we generally recommend using lead forms or instant forms, whatever they might be called in that platform. And those are basically the forms that appear in app. So if somebody's on Instagram and they click your ad, they don't go to the website necessarily. They'll get the form inside the app itself. And that's really good for remarketing because it's really easy to fill those forms in. So if they've already seen your program page in the past, you really just want them to fill in the form now. So there's no need to overcomplicate it. One of the caveats that's worth mentioning, though, is that one of the things we see actually quite a bit is that a lot of people have autofill on their phones. So sometimes you might get these sort of nonsensical form fills if their phone is just autofilling everything that they're going by. I mean, there's some ways around it, but one thing to bear is that if you do use these instant forms, you're probably going to get a bit of junk in with your legitimate inquiries. So it helps if you have some way to sort it. It could be an email campaign that goes out to them immediately. It could be some qualifying questions, just so your admissions team doesn't waste time chasing down, some bogus leads in there, and they really just get to the good stuff. So when it comes to using your paid ads budgets, so this would be because with paid ads in this case, what I'm referring to is anything that has an ad spend budget. Say you put 1,000 Facebook on ads or 1,000 on Google and so forth. And so the way we like to look at this is probably organize it in two phases. So this works for new programs or for a lot of different pushes, like seasonal ones. In the first phase, you're really kind of going light on prospecting. So you're open to getting people for early registrations and all that, but there's a good chance they're not fully ready to do it. So it might be better to shift the way your ads function so you save a bit of money, so you get more eyes again in your right demographic on it, but you're not paying for these much more expensive clicks for people who are actually, serving them the form, trying to get the leads right away. So it might be you can get a lot more awareness for a lot cheaper in this sort of first phase. We'd recommend doing this for about 2 to 4 weeks before moving to the second phase. So some things you might do are have traffic campaigns on Facebook and Instagram, which you get much cheaper cost per clicks than conversion ones. Get all these people that are in your target audience onto your, program page, make them aware of this lead magnet, make them aware of the program, and then you can remarket to these people in the second phase. And so in phase two, it's going to be really heavy on prospecting and makes a lot of use of remarketing. So anybody that came in from your newsletter, from your webinar, from your traffic campaigns that saw your program page for your new program, these are all the people we're going to be remarketing to, especially the ones who did not convert in the first phase. So again, we wouldn't mind if they convert, but we're not necessarily expecting it to. And in phase two, as you get closer to maybe a deadline or the proper launch of program, that's when we remarket it, when it's a bit more impetus, and we're more likely to see people fill in these forms. So some things we've seen doing this ourselves is that often in the first phase, you don't see a lot of conversions. So it might look like your KPI are actually really bad. You might get 1 or 2 conversions for a couple $100 spend, but then by phase two really makes up for it because you're going to be getting not only these slightly better quality remarketed leads, but oftentimes it's fairly cheap because if we're just showing it to people that have already engaged, there's a better chance that they're going to follow through in the second phase. And what we'd also be doing here is going a bit heavier on Google search ads as well. So, keyword driven, high intent campaigns to get people to your page to fill in that form. We might also be doing a little bit of this in the first part, but really as it gets closer to the end, that's when you'll probably see some of your better results. And the other good thing is that if your phase two is working really well, you can actually just transform a lot of these campaigns into sort of your evergreen strategy. So ads that you keep up all year round as long as that's relevant for you. So in terms of setting up these campaigns, there's a few things you would recommend. So in social media, traffic campaigns would be really good in that awareness building phase because again, you get lots of traffic from your target audience for relatively cheap, get those eyes on that page and then remarket to them afterwards. You can also do some prospecting throughout. So, don't be shy to try to collect some leads or some registrations, but still, if you think in sort of two phase, most of that should happen in the second part of this. And I also put just display in video here because social media, again, is very much on the images and on the videos. TikTok is entirely about video. So that's really what we're going to have here. And just as a sort of a pro tip, video ads often tend to be very strong for remarketing, particularly if the message is solid. So a lot of what we recommend too is have some video ads on different social media, just again, remarketing to all these people from your awareness phase. Google advertising would be a bit different. So Google's not as good for generating awareness and traffic as social media is, but you can kind of do sort of these mixed campaigns. So there's this type called discovery, which is a mix of text and image. At some point in October, they're going to transform and also have video component into them. So you can use these to kind of throughout your advertising phase lightly collect leads. So the people that are ready the first time they see it will be getting, served. They can fill in that form. You can also use it for remarketing. But really the bread and butter here will be your search campaigns that gets probably gives the most high intent, dedicated people. And often search campaigns are really good to be the last touch point. So maybe they saw you on social media first, but when they fill in that search keyword, they go to your landing page, there's a pretty good chance they're going to convert and be really serious about it as well. And one sort of bonus thing that we've seen too is that throughout this process, you can also run some general terms campaign is kind of how we call them. So this could be, say you're launching a PSW program. You obviously want to have PSW specific keywords in your search heavy campaign near the end, but having some slightly broader ones like healthcare college, healthcare workers studies, things like that. For people that don't really know the name of the program or the exact program, but maybe the field. So we've seen that often having this running throughout can kind of pick up people, get their eyes on it, where they're not 100% sure what they want to do, but have an idea. And this is a good way to funnel them and say, oh, yes, exactly. This is a program I'm looking for. I just didn't know what it was called before. So those are good to have as well. And like I said, too, if these work well in the phase two of your advertising, you can kind of keep them running longer, especially if you have multiple intakes. So you can kind of keep reusing some of these assets that you have to keep, filling that funnel for the next intake and the next intake, especially if you have them pretty close to one another. And as I mentioned before, you're also going to want to set up landing pages for Google and instant forms for social. So for landing pages, again, you want to be very specific, not just to your program, but also towards this sort of lead magnet you've put together. If it's about, getting a brochure, you want that to be very clear on this. What did they get? What sort of valuable item is your school offering that nobody else is doing on all of their RFI forms? You also really want to make sure this has been mobile optimized because you probably know that most traffic nowadays are mobile first. So there's nothing worse than making this gorgeous landing page but realizing it doesn't load properly on somebody's phone. And we would also really recommend if you have people with an Android or iOS devices to look at it on both because it might be shockingly different from one device to the other based on the operating system. And lastly, test these things. So there's probably nothing more heartbreaking than building your perfect campaign, perfect landing page, but not testing if the form works. And when students get there, they click submit and nothing happens. So be sure to test it a little bit as well and not just see how it looks. And on the social media side, again, these instant forms are amazing for remarketing. It's really easy to fill them in. But like I said before, it could be sometimes too easy. You might get a little bit of junk in there. And so it's really if you're going to do instant forms and get a large volume of these leads, you want to make sure you have a way to respond to it internally as well. That if you have, one person in your admissions team calling everybody and you get, 60 leads in a day, you're really going to be in a bit of trouble there if you get too many leads in this case. Not the worst problem to have, but you want to be able to efficiently respond. So maybe an email campaign could be useful to keep those people engaged, so forth. And even on that note about email, one thing we've seen, which maybe you've seen as well, is that people on social media seem to be a lot more fickle these days, harder to reach than they used to be. And so a common thing we've seen is that a lot of schools have a hard time reaching people from social media for any reason or another. Maybe they're younger and not used to phone calls. I'm not exactly sure what it is, but this kind of underlies the importance of having a good email follow-up campaign so that it keeps reminding them, keeps them engaged, because even if you can't get in touch with them immediately, as long as you're feeding them something, there's a good chance they'll come back if they're genuinely interested. And the other bonus about this too, if you set it up right, you can get all these leads immediately hooked into your CRM through something like Zapier, so you don't need to manually download them from your social media platform. And all right, so we're pretty much at the end. Looks like we're just about on time, so you're gonna have a few minutes for questions after this, but I'll just wrap up here with a few conclusions and takeaways that I think are useful. So one of the ones that we mentioned earlier is that there are really few wrong times when it's, a good time to launch, start promoting a new program. If you're going to have a new program up for the fall or the spring, really go nuts on it that month before, even if it's traditionally known as holidays. There's a good chance you'll have less competition and there might even be a good spike of people looking for it, which is what we've certainly seen in the data the past 2 years. Uh, start strong. Sorry, start with a strong, compelling lead magnet. So this is something you might want to put a little bit of thought into. It might take some extra work to put together some brochure or something. But again, having this will really help your program stand out. And you can use this in kind of all your different channels of material. I mean, your lead magnet could even be a webinar if you want. And, a lot of things signing up as that first touch point, first part of interest. You're going to want to ensure both your awareness phase and top of funnel phase make use of your lead magnet. Like I was saying, if you create this great thing, don't just let it sit there, put it to use, make it work for you, and bring those leads in. Also, as it goes along, be sure to review your data and don't be afraid to tweak your strategy based on new insights. So it could be things like maybe shortening your awareness phase and increasing your prospecting, or it could be putting some budget from here to there, pausing this. But when you look at your data, you'll be able to discover what's working, what's not, and maybe some things just need to be, lasting a little bit longer because they're working very well. And the last sort of tip is to launch within your means. So I know we talked about a whole bunch of stuff here, a lot of cool ideas, but really, if you're a smaller school with fewer resources, put more of those resources to fewer channels. So even though it would be awesome to cover every base, if you don't have the means, don't do a half job on everything. Just do a really good job on maybe the strongest ones for a particular demographic. So, a newsletter, Facebook, and some Google ads, that's still going to work good enough. I mean, as long as you're advertising it well, they're going to show up. So don't feel like you have to tick every box if there's only be sort of a token appearance here and there. So that covers up the bulk of our conversation for today. So I guess just the final few little slides. So we are, in fact, a marketing agency. We also do free digital assessments. This is one of the ways we often work with new schools. We see how your current marketing is looking like, and all for free. We can give you some insights and review how you might be able to improve that. We can even talk about if you're launching a new program, what would be some good things right for your school and so forth. And so we got about 5 minutes, and I think I saw a couple questions were popping up over here. So one of the ones here is what would be some good budgets for the ad spend part? So usually we do like a two-phase push like this. We often talk about, a ballpark would be 1,000 for one and 1,000 for the other, or just double that if you're a bigger school, triple it if you're a really big school. So maybe, $1,000 spent on generating traffic and awareness for the ad spend part, another 1,000 for the remarketing prospecting. But we often see in practice is kind of like that tip I said about, don't be afraid to change on the fly, because sometimes we see that it's worth putting a bit more on the prospecting, especially if you have a light prospecting start to it, where you see a lot of people trickling in as leads, even during the awareness phase. That could be a good sign that you should go more full blown on the second phase a bit earlier than possible. If you're not seeing as much engaged interest, let it last a bit longer and then go heavier over there at the end. Okay, another one just popped in. So we talked about focusing efforts for smaller organizations. Can you give an example or two of how the strategy might look? So for smaller organizations, we'd probably say stick to what are generally we consider some of the stronger avenues. So in terms of leads getting filled and high intent leads, I would say Google ads, particularly search ads, is one of the must-haves for any type of marketing. You really get the highest intent. You be very specific with that. And oftentimes you don't need to have a major budget for what it is. The one caveat is you might have a lot of competition depending on your region. Some cities in the Canada States are really busy, like the GTA area, Greater Vancouver, very kind of competitive areas. But otherwise, I would still say that's really good. Newsletter, some sort of a blast to your existing database could be very strong. And of course, try to get one social media up. So if you want to go small, maybe get some Google ads in there, social media posts, you can even boost them for a bit more, and a newsletter could be a good little triangle of, at least getting this off the ground. Another one, it's a question about how much it would cost to have our team support on a long-term basis. So that's something we could probably talk about after this. We'll get somebody in touch with you. Thanks for the question, Denise. And the last one I saw also here boils down to what would be the social medias we recommend. So usually when we say Facebook, we kind of refer to Facebook and Instagram because they're part of the same platform. Instagram is definitely a bit younger. Facebook's a bit older these days. So knowing your audience is like if you're targeting parents, you definitely want to be on Facebook, especially since Facebook has a lot of tools to target specifically parents of children of a certain age, like say you're doing a boarding school or something like that. Otherwise, TikTok is really good for awareness, particularly, especially from the younger generation as a first touch point. If the first time they discover your school, there's a good chance it could be on TikTok. Instagram's also very good for that, so I wouldn't dismiss it. And LinkedIn, I say have good things to say about it for more professional programs like continuing education, expanded education. Just know it tends to be pricier than the other ones. It tends to have a much higher cost per acquisition, but you can really focus it to get the right people, especially if they need to have a bachelor's degree to say before they take your course. And that's all the time we have. So thank you everybody for dropping by today. Hope to be in touch. At least one of you will be in touch with shortly after this. And yeah, you also have the slides within the next day. So enjoy the rest of your afternoon, everybody. Bye bye.
Thank you very much.